Hi, today I'm going to talk about the founding of the Mormon Church by Joseph Smith and how their struggle to fit into American society in the 19th century ultimately forced their movement west. I will also address the persecution of the church, the killing of Joseph Smith, and the settling of the church in the West by Brigham Young. The Mormon Church was founded by Joseph Smith in 1830. Smith was born December 23, 1805, in Vermont, but shortly after moved to New York. In 1823, Joseph Smith was visited by a Christian angel named Moroni, who spoke to him about an ancient Hebrew text that had been lost for thousands of years. The text had been carved onto gold plates by Native American historians in the 14th century. After finding the ancient text, Smith would dedicate the next 6 years of his life to translating the text with the help of his wife and other scribes. In 1830, the Book of Mormon was published. On April 6, 1830, the Church of Christ began at the home of Peter Whitmore in Fayette, New York. During this time, Joseph Smith would have a vision of a city of Zion, a utopian city in Native American territory in Missouri. In January 1831, missionaries reached Missouri and began preaching to Indians in the unorganized territory. That same year, the church moved to Kirtland, Ohio, due to persecutions in New York. This was a temporary move until the lands in Missouri could be purchased by the church. Smith arrived in Ohio in February 1831. This move to Ohio would be the first of many for the Mormon Church. The Mormon Church was not as a result of the Second Great Awakening, such as the Methodist and Baptist religions. Therefore, Mormons would not easily fit into early American society. This caused conflicts everywhere the Mormons went. In June 1831, the commandment to go to Missouri was given by Smith. In Ohio, the church had already begun to struggle with people due to rapid growth of the church and the manifestations of strange notions and false spirits among the members of the branch. According to Smith, many false reports, lies, and foolish stories were published in newspapers. In October and December 1831, Ezra Booth, a reporter, attacked the church in the press. In Ohio, Joseph Smith was tarred and feathered by a mob. This was only the beginning of many conflicts that happened with the Mormon Church and the American public. Even though the Mormon Church had the First Amendment right of the religion of freedom, they faced persecution in New York and now in Ohio. In Jackson County, Missouri, over 800 members gathered in 1832. 7 high priests were appointed by Joseph Smith to preside over the affairs of the rapidly growing Church of Zion. But in July of 1833, the relationship with the Saints, or the Mormons, and the original inhabitants of the area went south. A Protestant minister, Reverend Fins Edwins, said that the Mormons are the common enemies of mankind and ought to be destroyed. The tensions only got worse when the people of the town signed a manifesto called Secret Constitution that denounced Mormons. This manifesto accused the Mormons of tampering with slaves and inviting freed slaves to migrate to the church. The citizens of Jackson County, Missouri, held a meeting. At this meeting, the committee drafted a declaration that no Mormon could live in Jackson County, and that the ones already living here had to make a pledge to the county that they would leave as soon as possible. At the end of 1833, the Mormons would be forced out of Jackson County, Missouri. The settlement in Kirtland, Ohio, still remained, and most of the Missouri settlers had returned to it in 1834. and the years following, the Mormons had peace in Ohio from about 1834 to 1837 until the Panic of 1837. During this time, many members of the church accused the prophet Joseph Smith of being responsible for all the problems. In 1838, troubles for the church returned when there was an attack on a temple in Ohio. This would cause members to leave out of fear. About 200 or 300 withdrew from the church during this year, and eventually Joseph Smith would be forced out of Ohio because of mob violence. He would flee back to the part of Missouri where the Mormons still lived. When Joseph Smith fled to Missouri, he had no idea that he had just set the stage for the worst conflict the Mormons faced, the Mormon Wars, which were violent conflicts between Mormons and non-Mormons from 1838 to 1846. In the summer of 1838, there was about 5,000 Mormons living in Caldwell County, Missouri. When the cornerstone of the temple was set, Sidney Rigdon gave a speech saying the Mormons were independent from any mob and that the church would no longer bear the persecution. Rigdon said, "It shall be between us and them a war of extermination." In 1838, there was an election held in Missouri. One of the candidates was William Pinston, who did not like Mormons. Pinston addressed a crowd telling them that the Mormons were thieves, liars, counterfeiters, and more. He called for violence at the polls, creating mobs at the polls. Even with the violence, he would not win due to the showing of the Mormons. The tensions in Davison and Carroll County, Missouri, increased. After the election, there was a fight which only increased organized violence on both sides by more. Violence led to the Battle of Crooked River, which took place in October 1838. Mobs were burning houses, destroying crops, rustled cattle, detained prisoners, and threatened Mormons with death. The governor of Missouri, Boggs, would order the militia to war against the Mormons, leading to the signing of Missouri Executive Order 44, ordering Mormons to leave Missouri or be killed. Smith ended the first of many wars by surrendering at Far West, Missouri in 1838. Joseph Smith and 5 other followers were jailed and set to be tried in April of 1839 for murder, treason, burglary, arson, larceny, theft, and stealing. However, before they could sit for trial, they escaped to Illinois, hoping to flee persecution. Mormons now fled New York, Ohio, and Missouri. However, the peace again would not last long. When in 1841, an anti-Mormon political party was formed, creating conflict with the Mormon Church and non-Mormons in Illinois. In 1843, Joseph Smith would be arrested again in Dixon, Illinois. Joseph and his brother Hiram were arrested in Illinois for treason against Illinois because Joseph Smith declared martial law when he was the mayor. Missouri officials tried to have him extradited for trial in Missouri. It was their third attempt. They would await trial in Carthage, Illinois. However, before they could sit trial, Joseph and his brother were killed in jail by a mob. The murder of Joseph Smith and his brother left the church unsure of its future. The president and assistant president had just been murdered with no clear successor. Many Mormons would look to Brigham Young for leadership during this time. Following the death of Smith, Brigham Young and the Mormons moved farther west to the Utah Territory. The Mormon Church's early history is marred by persecution. Even in a land of religious freedom, they would find no tolerance. The Mormons would be forced to move or risk death, fight wars against their own neighbors, and be murdered for their religious beliefs. This was all in a country with the First Amendment right for freedom of speech to believe whatever you wanted. Even the government didn't protect them against the society that saw them as outcasts.